Hey, this is a quick demo of Astro Editor, and I just want to kind of explain how it works. Um, when you open up an Astro collection, you can do that by going to the folder icon here, right? And I'm just going to choose my personal website here, right? That's going to look for all of the Astro content collections which contain markdown files. And then when we click into these, we're able to open up some of these files. So I've got two collections here, articles and notes. I've gone in here, and now I've got this this editing interface up here, right? And one of the reasons that I built this was that I didn't want to be editing the front matter for these in in Cursor or VS Code, right? So what it does is it reads the front matter that exists in Markdown or MDX files, and it lets us edit them in here, right? So I can edit the title as you'd expect. The title's always up the top. You can edit the slug. I can tick this on and off as being a draft, right? And it will auto save after a couple of seconds. We've got date pickers for date fields. We've got tag pickers for tag fields like you'd expect. If there are enum fields, it will give you a drop down. And so on, like you'd expect, right? Now, one of the clever things about this is it doesn't just use the front matter that exists in a file. So if I kind of go over in here, this is the schema in my Astro website. So I've got two collections, right? Articles and notes. And what it will do is if I create a new note with very little markdown, if we go ahead and do that over here, and we go into source content notes, let's just make a new note in here, right? Called hello.md. We need to put some front matter in here, but if we just put title, and we save that, when we come back in here, if we now refresh the collections, and we go into notes, we've got this note up here right now. What you'd maybe expect is that it would just show this front matter here, but if I open it up, it won't just show that, right? It'll fill that in, but it will also show me the front matter that's available for this type of content, right? So it's not going to add anything in here at the moment, but if I were to go and make this a draft and tick that on and wait for it to auto save, it's now going to have added this draft is true in here, right? And this makes it way easier to like manage front matter and know what you're supposed to put in here, right? But it won't add extra stuff. Now, if there are extra things in here, like demo is true, right? Which don't appear in the schema, it will show those up in here, right? As options down here, okay? But obviously, generally, we shouldn't have that, okay? We should be using the fields that are defined in our schema. So yeah, that's kind of how this works. And the main reason for this app is not so that we don't have to write in an environment that is designed for coding, like VS Code, right? I want to be able to write articles and notes and whatever other collections I have in a kind of nice interface like this. So let's have a look at some of the features we've got in here, right? The main thing is this kind of front matter editing, nice way of doing that. But there are a bunch of other features. So drafts are marked specifically as they get this label up here, right? Now, if you don't use draft, that boolean and that name in your front matter as your draft thing, you can configure this in the preferences. So you can configure down here like which of the boolean preferences in your schema is the one that signifies draft. You can do the same thing with description if you have a kind of description field, and that's going to basically make it a bigger box up here. You can do the same with title, which will mean it's always up at the top and bold. And then pub date will basically mean if you have a published date, you choose which date field you want to use for that, and it will then order the sidebar rather than ordering it by reverse order of file name. It will do it by published date, right? And anything without a published date will always appear at the top in the sidebar. So that's kind of some of the configuration you can do there. I guess some of the other like sidebar features here, you can filter to just drafts up here, which will only show you a draft in the sidebar. It's obviously kind of useful if you're working on just editing drafts and you don't want to see all your published articles. But the main thing really is the ability to edit in a nice environment in the editor. So I can close the two sidebars here, and what I'll end up with is a much nicer kind of writing or editing interface. And actually, as we start typing, you can see that title bar and the status bar at the bottom disappeared. So we've got a really nice clean window to type in, and we can bring it back just by hovering up here, right? It will auto save every couple of seconds. And there's a few really useful keyboard shortcuts. So Markdown works exactly as you'd expect. So we've got like lists and so on. If we use Alt, Command, and 1, we get a heading 1. These are the same as Notion's commands for headings. 2 will give us a heading 2, 3 a heading 3, 4 a heading 4, and 0 will take it back to be a paragraph. So that's quite nice if you used a Notion. Quick way of just making things headings. Links and stuff will work as you'd expect. So if you select a word and do Command K, you'll get a link. Also, if you have a URL on the clipboard and you paste it over a word, just select the word and paste, it will insert the link correctly as you'd expect. If I take a screenshot quickly of something, it's possible to drag a screenshot in to here, and it will insert it and it will automatically rename that screenshot in the correct way and put it in the correct directory. So because we're in a notes collection, it's put it in assets/notes. And again, that directory is configurable in the project settings as to where do you want to put your assets. But that means if we come and look over in here, we'll see that in our assets, that's been renamed and copied over properly into here so that the link's inserted. That also works with files, but it will put a link to the file rather than a markdown image tag. So that's kind of most of the basic editing features, which is basically what we want when we're writing plain stuff in Markdown. Most of the formatting that you would expect works, like Command B will bold and so on and so forth, and you've got undo, and Command I will make things italic, and everything you'd expect there, right? Now, fence code blocks will work as you'd expect, but they won't do any syntax highlighting, because if you're going to do that, you should be over in VS Code. Now, there are a couple of other features that are probably going to be useful. So if we have a look at some article that has words in it, like the style guide, some of the other features that are worth mentioning, there's a command palette. So Command P will allow us to create a new file in the current collection. Obviously, we can toggle the sidebar on and off. We can open other collections if we have more than one. And we can have focus mode. So if I toggle focus mode on, what that will do is it will mean it will just have the current sentence highlighted, or if we're in a list item or a heading, just that. This can be quite nice for when you're writing and you just want to focus on the current sentence. We can also, let's toggle that off. We can also toggle on various highlights for when we're editing. So I can do noun highlights, and that's going to highlight all the nouns in here. And I could also toggle on like, say, adjectives, and that will bring those in. So again, this is just a nice way when you're editing of seeing, of kind of seeing if you're overusing conjunctions or whatever. But if we toggle all of those off, one of the last things that is useful in the command palette is the ability, if you have configured an IDE, so in your general settings, I've got cursor configured as the IDE command. If I'm in this file, I can open this file in IDE, and by hitting that, it will open it up in cursor in my case. I can also choose to just open the collection folder or open the whole project. Now, one of the last things here, if we are in an MDX file, which this is, I'm able to insert certain Astro components. So what I have in my project directory here, right, I've obviously got all of my content. But I also have a components directory, which has got like, you know, my website's header and everything. But I have a specific directory in here called MDX, and this contains components which are intended to be used in MDX files. So things like a call out, right? And these are obviously defined using TypeScript, and it inserts this stuff. But this allows me, when I'm inside an MDX file, to do something like call out and then and have this work as you'd expect, except that I'm not necessarily always going to remember what all the props are for this, right? Like we can see here that it takes a title, an icon, and a type, which are all optional. So there is a feature if you're in an MDX file that allows you to do command / and it will give you all of the Astro components that are in a certain directory, which again is configurable in the settings. So over here in the project settings, I've got the path in here to my MDX components. And if I just hit command / and I want to put the call out in, or let's say I want a bookmark card actually, I can go into that and it shows me the props that are available here, right? Now URL is a required prop, so we can't change that. That's ticked on already. But if I wanted to add some extra classes to this, right, I could toggle down to here, press enter to select it, and we can see a preview of what's going to be inserted at the bottom there. And then if I press command enter, it will insert that where I am, and I can then enter in like and tab completion works as you'd expect here to tab through these fields. And that's just a nice way of easily being able to insert these kind of MDX specific components. Obviously, if you don't have any of them, they're not going to show up in here, right? And all it does is essentially reads all of the files in the given folder here. It expects them to be Astro components. It expects them to define some props. It will look at these props and it will then show you the interface to be able to build that string out in a nice little editor. And that's kind of all there is to this, right? Not a lot of other features in here, but the main thing for me is the ability to be able to edit nicely in a clean interface, to be able to write and edit in a way that doesn't get in the way of my writing. I should say as well, actually, there are a couple of other little features in here that you just expect, right? So if I right click on one of these, I can rename the file in here. If I can duplicate it and it will correctly duplicate it without clashing file names. I can copy the path, or I can reveal in the Finder, and I can delete them. The usual stuff you'd expect in a basic file manager. And I think that's it. So yeah, and obviously this here will create a new record in whatever the current collection is. So, and so if we now come over here, we're going to have a new article in here, way down the bottom, right? Which is this one. And so this saves the disk as exactly as you'd expect. The preferences are saved on a per project basis. And it also has some kind of crash recovery. So if there is any problem with writing to disk, say your Astro project moves, it will save anything you've written in here and tell you about it next time. Next time you're there. Let me see if I've forgotten anything. No, I think that's it. Cool.